Grafit. Mark is a linguist. Mark is a linguist, author and language consultant with over 25 years experience in English language and linguistics. His primary role is with Trinity College London, with whom he is an examiner, trainer, researcher, and exam writer.
Hello. Hello. How lovely to be here. You're my first ever Mexican audience. Yeah, so no pressure. It's a real pleasure to be here. I've really been looking forward to this, to meeting Mexican colleagues and being able to share our knowledge. I'm very, very animated. I'm going to try to control myself because it's a wide room and a small space. So if I start animating myself too much, then just shout at me and I'll stand still again. Okay, everyone can hear me okay? Yes, good. Okay, so I did print out lots of handouts, but I don't know if everyone has one. Are there any extras? Does anyone have any extra copies that we can pass around? If not, I'm afraid we're going to have to share. Even if you don't like sharing. There's one spare there. You got one more? Yeah, here we go. Now, with this handout, don't worry, you don't need to read it yet. When it's relevant, I'll tell you which bit to look at. Okay? Okay, let's start. So, my name is Mark. It always feels like the introduction to Alcoholics Anonymous. Hi, my name is Mark and I'm an alcoholic. No, I'm not an alcoholic, though I do like your tequila. I've got 6 kilograms of tequila in my suitcase. I really have. Okay, so our talk today is communication, not interrogation. Now, the basis for this talk is not that I'm trying to teach anybody anything new, because of course we're all teachers together, and I hope we share relatively similar philosophies. But what I'm going to do during this talk is to draw on some specific experience and specific expertise, which I feel is useful for all of my teaching colleagues around the world. The feedback that we have from this talk previously is that teachers very much appreciate it. There are original ideas in here. There are some things which are common to all teachers, but there are some original ideas in here. And hopefully at the end of this, you'll have something that you can take back into the classroom and you could use tomorrow. So there's some theory, but there's also something quite practical as well. Is that okay? I hope you're happy with that balance. Okay, so let's start. As teachers, I hope we share the same philosophy, especially teachers in this 21st century. Firstly, I think we all have an idea of the primacy of communication. We all think that really the reason for learning English is to communicate. We agree, yeah? Does anyone have any other reasons for learning English other than to communicate? Now, hopefully we all agree that communication is paramount. That's our starting point. That's our reason for communicating. I think in olden days, people used to learn other languages for other instrumental reasons. But nowadays, especially in our global environment, English is the medium of communication around the world. And we have to accept that our students probably are going to be using English not even to talk to native speakers, but most likely to talk to other speakers of other languages. And English is becoming that lingua franca. So we need to develop our students' communication skills in particular. Now, taking it more focused into the classroom is a surrogate for real life communication. Is everyone okay with the word surrogate? I don't know if it's the same in Spanish. Well, can anyone translate it for me? Okay. A surrogate, for example, here's an example. In human sciences, a surrogate baby is when a woman carries a baby for another person. That's a surrogate baby. In the academic context, a surrogate is It's not the original, but it's the next best that you can get. So a surrogate in this context means that the classroom is not real life, but we want to create something that is very close to real life. And if we're training our students in real life skills in the classroom, they have a better chance of surviving in the outside world. ¿Claro? ¿Clarísimo? Que hablo español. Okay, and our aim ultimately is to create independent communicators. In the end, and I know it's funny to say it, but in the end we should become redundant in the way that our teachers became redundant, because we become expert communicators. We don't need teachers anymore when we become good communicators. And our students, this is what we're trying to achieve for them. We want them to become independent communicators, and they're not dependent on the teacher when they leave school and they're ready to live in the outside world. Okay, so I think we all share, do we share that philosophy? We're in agreement. Does that make anyone incredibly angry with resentment? No? Good. Then I think we're all in the right place. Now is your chance to, if you disagree with that, you're not going to like what comes next. Now is your chance to leave. Okay, all right. So, in terms of teaching communication, now, we want to know what our students can do. Now, I'm not going to, of course I haven't got the time to, and I wouldn't insult your intelligence by telling you how to teach, of course not. But what I want to focus our talk on today is specifically around how we know what it is that our students can do. Now, we are regularly checking our students and getting signals from them. For example, what do we do during the lessons to find out what the students can do? That's it, we ask questions, don't we? And we check their understanding. Anything else?
We interact each other to see if they can interact with the activity and cite them.
Exactly. So we get them in pair work or group work, we get them to interact with each other, not just teachers, but also with each other, because that's what happens in the real world. Anything else?
Reading and explaining.
Yeah, having to explain something. It can be something you've read, something that you've seen on a DVD maybe, but having to transfer that knowledge to another person using the medium of English. Anything else? No? Okay. Well, we need to know what our students can do, but sometimes we need to be a bit specific about what it is that we're looking for. I, in my own experience, can say that I have found that at times I kind of lose sight of the reason for being in the classroom. Sometimes there are so many things happening and we have so many pressures. They can be non-academic, administrative pressures. There can be all kinds of problematic student pressures, and sometimes it becomes very difficult for us to retain a vision of what it is that we're trying to find out about our students. So I've put a kind of informal list here that we're going to go through now. This is not a definitive list, but I think it's a nice summary of the kind of aspects that we need to remember that we want to focus on. So, first of all, we need to think about the activities, and specifically we need to think about activities that will help our students to demonstrate certain skills. Sometimes we only do activities because it's in the book. You know, it's true, we've all done it. Sometimes we do an activity because that's what the test tells us they have to do. Even though we don't really know why they have to do it, but we have to do it, so that's what we do. But I think we should remember our focus. We should retain the focus. Why are we doing this, and what activities will help our students to demonstrate really what they can do? So, first thing is we need to give them activities that will help them to demonstrate the range of language and the accuracy of language. Now, I think that's pretty basic, isn't it? I think we all agree on that. When we were at school, that's how we were taught. We were always taught about use a lot of grammar, use a lot of vocabulary, and use it correctly. That's the traditional way of teaching. Yep? True, true. It is also what most parents think you are doing. Most parents do not speak English. Most parents do not know anything else about English learning. They think you give lists of grammar and verbs and vocabulary, The students memorize it, and then they use it. That's it. That's English, isn't it? Now, of course, we are experts in our field. We are expert teachers. We know that there's more to communication than this. So yes, we need to give them activities that demonstrate range and accuracy, or help them to demonstrate range and accuracy, but also we need to give them activities that help them to demonstrate their ability to engage in a conversation, taking the point from down here. We need to give them the opportunity to talk to each other, to talk in pairs, to talk in groups, even on the internet. Have you heard of the internet? It's an amazing invention. On the internet, maybe even talking to other people on a webcam. But we need to give them opportunities to help them demonstrate this. Traditional course books do not give them the opportunities they need. And course book writers, traditionally, are guilty of many, and publishers, are guilty of many crimes against English language teaching, in my view. Good. Viva la revolución. We also need to give them activities that give them an opportunity to demonstrate active listening skills. Now, by active listening skills, I mean, don't just hear a question and reply. You need, as a listener, you need to be listening to the message, the coherent message that comes over a series of turns. You need to be responding at each moment to the needs of your interlocutor. It's not a case of, I use the analogy of conversation tennis. If conversation is like a tennis game, then of course, ideally, the best games go in both directions all the time. Traditional course books, however, they tend to fire a ball at the student, and the student catches it. And that's it. I answer the question, that's it. I heard the question, I answered the question. What more do you want? And of course, what we want is for them to knock the ball back. We want them to be responding and building the conversation. So we need to give them tasks that help them develop their active listening skills. We also need to give them tasks that help them to use language appropriately. Now, we know, I use a great example here. Now, being from a Latin language, of course, you love phrasal verbs. Phrasal verbs. Can't get enough phrasal verbs. Yeah. Phrasal verbs are hilarious fun. If there's anyone here who's a German speaker, then you will share a love of phrasal verbs that I have. I love phrasal verbs, they're brilliant. Latin speakers do not love phrasal verbs. I'm so sorry they exist, I'm so sorry. But as an example of appropriacy, you know there is an issue in English around register, and generally speaking, Latin-based words or Greek-based words tend to be more formal. They tend to be more formal. Phrasal verbs tend to be more informal. Now, if suddenly this television explodes, now let's hope it doesn't, but if it explodes suddenly and catches fire, then there are two possible responses in English. I can say, quick, quick, the fire. And I have two choices. Now I can say, quick, quick, put out the fire. And that would be appropriate to this very basic situation, a very human situation. Or, what do you call the red machine? The extinguisher. So I could say, quick, quick, extinguish the fire. Now, to any English speaker, extinguish the fire sounds hilarious. I mean, but a situation so dramatic and so basic, to be using such high formality, it's great. So we need to be teaching our students about the appropriacy of language. They need to know when to choose which word for which occasion. We know, for example, when they're writing, we know that we have informal letters, we have emails, we have formal letters. We know this idea. What's the word I'm looking for, beginning with an R? Register. Yeah, we need to teach them about register. We need to teach them about when is the right time to use which piece of vocabulary or which structure, which phrase, etc. Okay, and lastly, we need to give them activities that give them the ability to lead a conversation. And I emphasize this, the word lead. Too many course books, and historically, too many materials that exist, they put students in a passive position. Students are the recipients of questions only. But of course the real world is not like that. The real world makes demands on the student to create the conversation, to lead the conversation. Is everyone familiar with the Common European Framework? I think most people are now. It's become quite famous outside of Europe. Specifically, when you get to B2, it says in the Common European Framework that the student must demonstrate the ability to initiate and maintain a conversation. This is a specific speaking skill. Textbooks are guilty of not doing this. And it makes me angry. So, those are the types of activities that I feel we should be doing for our students. We should look at the materials and we should consider if the activities are doing all of these things. Don't just blindly accept what's in a textbook, because it probably isn't doing this. Oh, sorry, there was one more. Representing real-life communication skills. Sometimes the course books can be very false, very contrived, very synthetic, and they ask students to do tasks that they would never do in the real world. We need to give them tasks that match what's going to happen in real life. Particularly if we know students are going to go to university, for example, then they need to be able to understand somebody talking in this context. Okay, so what I'm kind of getting at here is language competencies. Now, this is the first point on your handout. You'll see that I put language competencies on there. When I talk about language competencies, I think a lot of people in the room will be familiar with the term, but maybe you may have some different versions of it. There's no complete agreement on what constitutes language competencies. There are different views on it academically. But I'm going to summarise 5 here. The first one is linguistic competence. We need to give our students the opportunity to demonstrate linguistic competence. Linguistic competence is what I said the parents think that we are doing. It's the grammar, the vocabulary, the pronunciation. That's the linguistic competence. It's the basics of the language. And parents think that we are just teaching linguistic competence and then we go home and have a little coronita and some tacos. And that's it. Our working day is finished. But that is what happens, isn't it? Yeah, okay, good, yeah. What else would you do? Okay, the second one, discourse competence. So what we want our students to do is to demonstrate that they can hold a conversation. It's not enough to respond to a question. They need to be able to demonstrate cohesion and coherence. They need to be able to understand discourse markers. So when they're listening to someone who says, I'd like to come to your party, but unfortunately, they understand that something negative is about to happen. Okay, so we have discourse competence. We have sociolinguistic competence, by which I mean choosing the correct words or phrases and the correct register for the situation. Not all situations will require the same language. Claro? ¿Todo bien? Vale? I know you don't use vale here, do you? It's really Spanish. I'm so sorry, I learned my Spanish mostly in Spain. But it's okay, because I laugh at the Spanish, because vale? For me, vale. That's vale. Silly language. Okay. Well, what's the best Mexican phrase for? Just todo bien? Or what can I say instead of vale? Sale? Sale? Sally is a girl's name. Okay. Yeah, does anyone speak Portuguese in the room? Do you know how they do it in Brazil? They have this brilliant thing in Brazil where they say, tudo bem? And the response, tudo bom. But if you ask, tudo bom? The response? How brilliant is that? It's so interactive. Okay, the fourth one. The fourth one is strategic competence. Now, this is really critical because our students cannot predict everything that's going to happen. In real life is not predictable. We need to give them opportunities to practice getting it wrong and finding the right way. So this is paraphrasing, circumlocution, using avoidance strategies. Now, I work as an examiner, and I know when a student doesn't know some vocabulary because they will do a dance around it. And we do this dance together where we know what this word would be if you knew it, but we're going to dance around it and negotiate the meaning. So we need to give students opportunities to practice and develop strategic competence. And finally, and this one makes people's heads explode usually, pragmatic competence. Pragmatic competence, it can take many forms, but one of the ideas of pragmatic competence is the idea of quantity, so that students need to give enough of a response and not too much, but also don't say one word, because that's not polite. You know, we always stereotype teenagers. Around the world, it's the same stereotype. When you talk to a teenager and they say, "Hi, you all right? How was today?" And they say, What? I said I'm fine. You know that teenager. We've all met that teenager. We were all that teenager once. We were all that person. Okay, what they're doing there is they're flouting the rules of pragmatic competence. They're not playing the game. They're giving too little information or too much information. Other aspects of pragmatic competence are understanding the message underneath the message. So, for example, this person here is sitting by the door, and I look at her and say, "Oh, it's really hot in here." By which I mean, open the door. And pragmatic competence is something that exists in all languages, and it does transfer quite well. There are quite a lot of universal pragmatic rules and features, but they don't always transfer, and students need to have practice to understand what that second level of meaning could be. Textbooks are terrible for doing this. I mean, if textbooks miss one thing completely, pragmatic competence is what all textbooks miss, in my view, so far. This will change in the future. Okay, any questions on that? Okay? All right, so this is where, quick question?
So just for simplify, the pragmatic competence is just that the students have to say the right measure of something? Or kind of this?
Yeah, for example, if I say to you, "Hi, how are you?" and you say, "I'm fine, thanks," that's okay. If you say, "Fine," it might be that you're trying to demonstrate that you're not happy. If you say, "I'm fine, thanks, yeah, I've just been to the shops and I bought myself a new television. My television is fantastic. You should see my then you've done too much and you've broken that rule. Okay, so let's get to practicalities. Look at this. See if you recognise this scenario, and in the view of what I've just said, see if you recognise it in terms of demonstrating all of the competencies. Is that what it does? Maybe you recognise this activity. So there's a picture there. Can you guess what's going to happen next? Describe this picture, says the teacher or examiner. And the student says, "I can see a man, I can see a woman, I can see some children, they are on the beach." That's my Spanish accent, by the way. It's not Mexican, it's not Mexican. If I do a Mexican, I have to ride a horse. You've got a lovely bouncing accent. It's like everyone's singing a song. Okay, so, but with this, if you look at this, is this demonstrating those competencies?
No.
Really, it's not, is it? Yet that activity is incredibly popular. There are very famous exams that do that activity. But what is it telling you? What is it telling you about your students' competencies? Practically nada, really. Try another one. So, the teacher or examiner asks, "Where are you going to go on holiday?" And the student says, "I'm going to India." "Are you going to go sightseeing?" "Yes." "Are you going to try new food?"
Yes.
Okay, and you see the problem here? Who is doing all of the work? The teacher. The teacher is doing all the work. And this student has worked out, within one response, they have worked out that it's okay, I don't need to do anything because the teacher has lots of questions waiting for me. So if I just sit back, have a relax, keep talking, teacher. I'm ready for everything. Yep. Now, our activities, sometimes we create our own problem as teachers by doing this. We talk too much. And we don't give students, we don't shape the activity in a way that's going to develop conversation. We're all guilty of doing it, sometimes under pressure, sometimes because we have to work with material that we don't like. It happens. But you recognise this. And of course, sometimes we have the fear. You know the fear, the terrible fear, the fear of silence. We think our students are not going to talk, and so we fill the space for them. Our own anxiety takes over, and we talk too much. We all do it. It's a natural human thing to do. But students, they don't have to worry about it, because they know if they say yes, you've got another question. And we need to look at our activities and reevaluate our activities and the way that we speak to students to make sure that what we're doing is not giving them these very narrow activities. Because, well, if you look at it, really, which of those competencies is that little activity going to demonstrate? It's not much, is it? You've got a bit of a linguistic. It's not a lot of discourse competence, really, because it's individual sentences. There's no connection from one point to another. They're individualised responses. Sociolinguistic, well, yes. Nothing. Pragmatic competence, well, we're giving the opportunity to the students to break the rules of pragmatic competence, and that's not what we should be doing. Okay, next. So in summary for this first section, I've got a list A and a list B, and this is on your handout as well. And my list A and list B, you can either choose list A or you can choose list B. Which one do you think it might be? I've got a list of options here for the way that we form our activities. So we can either choose to do activities that are one-way tasks, teacher to student, or we can do two-way tasks. Your preference would be? I hope a two-way task. We can either do activities where the student simply responds to the teacher, or we can do activities that require active listening, where new information comes, and students have to respond to the new information, and they have to adjust their language and position. We can either do tasks which are scripted beforehand, and there are many exams, most exams, pre-script what the examiner is going to say. Or you can have the communication being created within the task, so that it's, to use my word, surrogate, so that the activity becomes a surrogate for real conversation. You can either have tasks based on predictable interaction, so the student knows how it's going to work before they start, or you can have something spontaneous. They don't quite know what's going to happen, and there will be some surprises. You can have tasks which contain no surprises, or you can have tasks which require coping with the unexpected. You can have tasks which focus on grammar, lexis, and pronunciation, or tasks which include grammar, lexis, and pronunciation as a part of the interaction. You can have tasks which focus on accuracy, or tasks which focus on communication first, and then accuracy second. And you can have artificial tasks, such as picture descriptions, or you can have tasks which replicate real-world activities, where students have to create real conversations, as it will really happen. Honestly, think about it. If your students go to London, imagine they're on the trip of their lifetime, they go to London, they go to the famous shopping street of Oxford Street. They're hungry, they want something to eat. They go into McDonald's. they go to the counter, it's their big moment, and they say, "Hello, I would like a Big Mac." And they're thinking, "Yeah, I'm proud." And the person working behind the counter says, "Look at the pictures. Describe it for me." It's not going to happen. So why are we giving students tasks that are completely ridiculous, that do not happen in real life? Okay. Did I make my point? Okay, I think I made my point. Okay, so hopefully you're with me on list B. Really, that's where my mind is going, and that's, in my experience, that's where I find students become independent. They become successful communicators when we give them tasks like this. Okay, now, moving on. This is my part 2. So the talk's in 2 halves, really. This is part 2. If you take away from teachers, if you take away the traditional course book, if you take away the opportunity just to, I ask you a question, you answer me, if you take away scripted activities and exams, then that kind of, in a sense, makes you feel a bit vulnerable. So what do I do instead? Well, this second part of the talk, I'm going to give you some techniques that, well, I'll explain more in a moment, but some techniques that will help you to keep your students talking and interacting, but without you doing too much work. Because in the end, we need to get them talking. We need to think about how we're going to get them talking without the questions, and we need to know how we're going to keep them talking without all of the questions. Okay, now, the people, I work for different organisations, and I work with different organisations, and I know a few different sources of some good techniques to keep the conversation going. And these people are language examiners. And I'm a language examiner. That's my second confession of the day. Hi, my name is Mark, and I'm a language examiner. Please don't judge me. Language examiners. Language examiners do this for a living. Language examiners are all teachers, but they spend a lot of time talking to people and trying to get them to speak whilst they say very little. So they are professional teachers, professionals who interview, and they interview with using elicitation skills. They are not script readers. No disrespect, but any monkey can read a script. They're not script readers. These professional interlocutors are people who know how to get students talking and how to keep them talking. They do it by creating dynamic and flexible interaction. They do it so that they can elicit specific communication skills naturally and in context. And they know how to use the exam room, to use my surrogate word again, they use an exam room as a surrogate for real-world conversation. So this exam room, the conversation in the exam room, is as close to what will happen in the real world as it is possible to be. Of course, an exam is an exam, of course. Okay, and who are these people? Well, the people I'm talking about today are people who work for this organisation, who sponsored me, so thank you. You could ask, there are some other people who do similar formats. It doesn't have to be these people, but they're a good example to work with for this kind of flexible format. So, we're going to be looking at some examples taken from professional language examiners. What I did myself is I did some research, and I did some academic research, which at the end of this talk, I'll put on the screen. If you want to read it, it was published in an academic journal under my name, and it is research into how examiners, what techniques examiners use to start students talking and to keep them talking with minimal work. So I'll put the reference to it at the end if anyone's interested. But we are looking at professional examiners. So obviously, professional examiners, got away with it. Professional examiners are people who use these techniques. We want to know what techniques they use. We want to know what do they do to get the students talking. What do they do to keep the students talking. What do they do to make students give longer replies, not just yes/no answers? And what do they do to make sure that students take responsibility for initiating and maintaining the conversation? Okay, so what we're going to do next is I'm going to give you some examples, and I'm going to ask you to tell me what it was that the examiners did, and then we will categorise these examples at the end and list them as different ideas for techniques. Sally? Sally, Bally? Tudo bem? Tudo bom? Tudo bom? Okay, all right, now, I'm going to jump forward, I'm not going to do the video. Okay, so you've got your handout there. Now, if you look at your handout, you will see, on the handout, you will see little mini exchanges. Can I just borrow that for a second? Thank you. So, on the handout, you'll see there are 3 on page 1 and 5 more on the back. And you will see, I've given it a label. So this is what's actually happening. So in the first example, the examiner makes a statement of fact. And the candidate, what did the candidate say? Well, let me show you one here. Yeah. Example number 1, the C and the E are the wrong way around, just noticed. It should be E with the space and C with the answer. Okay, just change the E and the C the other way on example number 1. Okay, so you'll see what the candidate's response was. What I'm going to ask you to do is to tell me what the examiner said to get the candidate to say this. Okay? So, we'll do one example. So, the candidate said, my birthday is in July. What did the examiner say to get the student to say this? That's it. Did the examiner ask a question? No. Now, this is done from a very, very low-level exam, so the students are down at A1 and they only have to know dates. That's all they need to do. If the examiner were to ask, when is your birthday, how would the student reply? July. You'll get one word answer. If you make a statement and you say, my birthday's in July, your student will respond with a full sentence. Now, if you're teaching students who are very young and very low, using a full sentence is a major achievement. You know, with the little ones, they're 7, 8 years old. To get them to use more than one word is a really difficult thing to do. So this is an example from the very, very low levels. And so that would be a very successful elicitation technique, because you've got the student to use a full sentence in their reply. Great. Okay, so you've got 7 more examples there, and I'm going to ask you now, I'm going to give you 5 minutes, with a person next to you, your new friend or lover, or with a person next to you, I'd like you to look at the other 7 examples and decide what did the examiner say to get the student to respond this way. Is that okay? So you have the student's response, what did the examiner say? So you've got 5 minutes, the rest of the 7 tasks, and with your new friends and lovers. Is it possible to share with the student, or we haven't got anything? We've got nothing to share with the student. There are no more copies. Okay. Thanks. Okay, done? Done, diddly done, done? Done, done. Okay, so number 2. Now remembering these things, I know they seem a little bit just like, they're just sentences, but these are critical. These are very, very expert techniques that examiners use to keep students talking. Remember, in an exam, an examiner mustn't talk very much. The candidate, let's say, has 10 minutes, and you have to give them the maximum opportunity to talk. If the examiner's doing all the talking, then the candidates don't have a chance to demonstrate what they can do. So these techniques are specifically used to do the minimal amount from the examiner to get the maximum return from the student. And these are techniques that we as teachers really should be using. Okay, so the second one is repeating the statement with a question intonation. So, the candidate said, I'm going to India. The examiner said, yes, I'm going to stay there for 2 weeks with my family. So the examiner said, you're going to go to India? And it is a fact that if you repeat a statement from another person, they will give you a sentence in reply. They will. If you say, oh, India, they might say, yes, India. But if you give them a statement, you'll get a long sentence out of them. And if you just pause a little bit, you'll probably get a second sentence out of them. Maybe even a third. You'll see a pattern happening here, which is less is more. Okay, third example. So, encouraging expansion. Student says, I'm going to go to India. The examiner says, and the candidate says, yes, it's so exciting, I'm going to see the Taj Mahal. So what did the examiner say to get the student to give such a full response? Okay. Now, I'm going to take that point. If you say what places are you going to visit, if you're very specific about an item, the students will give you a list. They won't give you a sentence. That's the trick. You've got to avoid giving them the opportunity to list things. Because the easiest avoidance strategy is listing. Try to avoid giving them the opportunity to list. But if you say something like, tell me more, you can't say yes or no in response to tell me more. You have to give a full sentence. You have to. So tell me more is a great expansion trick. There are others. I'm sure you can think of others. Fourth one, pretend you don't know about something. Now, if you have ever met a teenager in your life, you will know that they love to tell you what you don't know. They can think of nothing more pleasurable than talking to an adult and telling them what they don't know. So, as an adult, exploit this. Use it to your advantage. Pretend that you don't know about things. Obviously, you don't want to look an idiot, but you can pretend that there's a limit to your knowledge. So, the candidate says, I'm going to India, and it's an interesting country, it's very historic and colourful, and the examiner, of course, said, oh, I don't know anything about that. Now, as human beings, our natural response in conversations is to respond with similar knowledge. In conversations normally, what we do, if somebody says I'm going to India, we also talk about what we know about India. As teachers, stop doing it. Control yourselves. Police yourselves. And pretend you don't know. If you pretend you don't know, you'll get more language from those students. They'll keep on talking for longer. Thanks. 5. Give positive feedback. Everyone loves some positive feedback, of course. So, in this context, what did the examiner say?
How do you feel?
Wonderful, it sounds exciting. That's interesting. Anything you choose, but praise them. When students are using a second language, and especially if they're talking to an adult, we forget how important praise is. We forget how important positive feedback is. When one adult tells a student that something is interesting, they remember that moment. It means something to them. They go home at the end of the day and they tell their parents that the teacher said that what they did was interesting. It really matters. They really notice it. As adults, we forget how important positive feedback is to students. Okay, 6. Now, to follow up on not knowing something, you can also pretend you've made a mistake. Because students, second to telling you that you don't know something, the other favourite hobby is correcting you. Oh yeah, you silly adults. So pretend that you've made a mistake. I find in my own work, I find in teaching and examining, I find this to be possibly the most effective technique. You just have to change one fact. One detail needs to be incorrect, and that's enough. They will respond, and they will correct it, and they will give lots of information to justify why you're wrong. So, I'm going to India. And you get this. This is what I heard. From my own research, this is real. They say, no, it's really hot. You're wrong. I really want to visit it. I think it's a beautiful country. You're double wrong. And they will add more information to justify why you're wrong. Brilliant. Exploit it. Use it to your advantage. So, of course, the examiner is saying something like, it's really cold. Sorry?
Take your raincoat.
Yeah, take your raincoat. Yeah. Last one, reformulation. Interesting trick, this one. Reformulation. India is a really interesting country. I'd like to stay there. Reformulation is... Well, you can see from the answer. What do you think it might be? The key introductory phrase is, so what you're saying is, and you reply back to them what they've just said incorrectly. You reformulate what you just heard. So, for example, what are you going to do on your summer holidays?
I don't know yet, but I would like to go to Veracruz.
You don't like staying in Mexico? You're saying you don't want to stay in Mexico?
I said I want to be there in Veracruz, that is in Mexico.
Oh, I see. So he said he wants to stay in Mexico. No, I said I want to stay in Veracruz, and that's in Mexico. So he added additional information whilst correcting me at the same time. So if you reformulate with the "so what you're saying is" phrase, it's a really brilliant trick to get people talking. Listen to the radio. Listen to TV interviews. The people who you think are really good interviewers, listen to them and listen to what they do. They do not ask lots of questions. They do this. This is what the professionals do. Last one, silence. Remember I said less is more. India's a really interesting country. I'd like to stay there. I think it would be really... Now, this is it. All you need to do is shut up. But of course, your automatic... It's right in your heart, in your stomach. You know you want to say something. Control your desire to speak. If you control yourself and you can use silence to your advantage, you will find that your students speak more. Stop yourself from jumping in whenever they pause. Don't fill the space. Let them feel the uncomfortable silence. Let them feel how they really need to speak more, don't they? That wasn't enough, was it? It's really powerful. Okay, now, I'm going to finish with two different things. So we've got a summary here, a quick summary of the techniques, which are on your handout. So you've got statements of fact are powerful. Repeat what the other person says with a question intonation. Also, encourage expansion. Also, pretend you don't know about something. Also, give positive feedback. Remember, one word from you is like 10 positive words to a student. Pretend you've made a mistake or misunderstood. Use reformulation, so what you're saying is. And to finish, use silence. Remember, less is more. I just want to do two little things then to finish with. First, your turn. Tell me what's happening here. Here's a conversation, and it's on your handout as well. Let's start with that. So, first person says, I'm not going on holiday this year. Second person says, oh, I am. I'm going on holiday next month. So, what was this first person doing? What trick? It's a statement, isn't it? Just a statement. You don't have to ask a question for everything. Make a statement, and it will make people talk. Really? That's interesting. What's that trick?
Give positive feedback.
Positive feedback. Yeah, I'm going to Sweden. You're going to Sweden? Question intonation, isn't it? Repeat with question intonation. Yeah, I'm staying there for a week. But you said you don't like cold countries. Yeah, you can do a misunderstanding, can't you? Uh-huh. I love them, and it's very warm in summer. Oh, I don't know anything about Swedish weather.
Pretend you know.
Pretend you don't know. The temperature in July can be over 30 degrees. You're saying Sweden is hotter than the United Arab Emirates? Hotter than Dubai? What's that? Reformulation. No, not hotter, but it gets very hot in summer. Really? Use silence to your advantage. It's really, really powerful. Okay, jumping forwards to finish with then, a summary. If you want to teach or assess communication effectively and generate as much language as possible in the classroom, my checklist is: look at your textbooks and your materials and decide, are they teaching and testing all of those competencies? Are they just doing linguistic competence, or are they doing something more? I would strongly suggest they are probably limited to linguistic, possibly occasionally discourse when they're teaching, however, unfortunately, but there's not a lot of the other competencies. So look at your materials, and critically view them and say what's missing. Think what you can do to make them more generative and more communicative so that they match the real world. So consider your own interventions when you talk. Are you encouraging communication or are you preventing communication? It's extremely easy for us as teachers to jump in or to ask a question after a question after a question. And what we're actually doing is narrowing the student's opportunity to display the range of competencies. Be flexible in your elicitation techniques. When you're talking to your students in your class, change your techniques. Don't just use questions, use silence, use reformulation. Use the power of ignorance. Don't interrogate. All that happens when you fire questions at students is they say less and less and less because they know you're going to do the work for them. Okay. Last one, remember, less is more. So, if anyone would like any more information about the research behind this talk, that's the reference. If anyone is interested in finding more about the exam that I was talking about, there's a website there. And I would like to take this opportunity to say thank you very much for listening.
Okay, so as less is more, I just want to say thank you. I'm going to give you this on behalf of Cele, and also a little gift for you. So, thank you. Okay.